the Merovingian bloodline, the Merovingian dynasty. The dynasty where the foundations of modern France were first laid. A bloodline that shaped the fate of Europe for centuries. Official history tells us this. The Merovingian dynasty takes its name from Merovec, the son of the Frankish king Clodio. But history stops there. And the real question begins exactly at this point. Was Merovec truly the son of King Clodio? Because the stories surrounding his birth are not a royal tale. They are not heroic. They are not holy. They are disturbing. This story appears in the Chronicle of Fredegar, written in the 7th century, almost 200 years after the events themselves. According to the Chronicle, in the year 411 AD, one afternoon, the wife of King Clodio decides to enter the sea. Nothing unusual, until it happens. While bathing, a being appears before her. Its name, Quinotaur. The text never fully explains what this creature is. It only says this: a being resembling the monsters of Neptune, a creature that comes from the sea, meaning not fully human, not fully animal, not fully definable. Some describe it as a bull-like beast with 5 horns. The Chronicle does not hesitate. It claims the queen has contact with this being, and after that encounter, she becomes pregnant. From this moment on, history grows silent. Some accounts insist that the father is King Clodio, but the same texts carefully preserve a dangerous sentence. It is unknown which one was the father. For medieval chronicles, this sentence is explosive. In the year 412 AD, Merovec is born. The midwives freeze, because on the child's back there is a red mark, not an ordinary birthmark. Its shape cannot be identified. It resembles a symbol, something unsettling. Rumors spread quickly. This child is not ordinary. This child carries holy blood, and that blood may not be human. Years later, some sources claim that Merovec's son, Childeric I, founded the Merovingian dynasty in 458 AD. Others argue that his grandson, Clovis I, who united all Frankish tribes, was the true founder. And yet, Clovis did not name the dynasty after himself, not the House of Clovis, not something new. Why? Did he simply love his grandfather? No, no, no. Because for the Merovingian kings, power did not come from swords, not from spears, not from armies. Their power came from blood. Holy blood, returned to the beginning. Who stood at the origin of it all? Merovec. And from whom did this holy blood flow? Merovec. That is why the dynasty was named Merovingian. Those who came from Merovec. The Merovingian kings did not see themselves as ordinary men, because their blood was not ordinary blood. It was believed to be lighter, sacred. But there was a problem. Blood is invisible. No one can look into veins and see divinity. The Merovingians understood this, so they made their blood visible. Through hair. Hair was not decoration, it was not tradition, and it was certainly not fashion. Hair was the extension of blood. Blood inside, hair outside. And when one was cut, the other lost its authority. That is why Merovingian kings never cut their hair. Because when hair was cut, it wasn't just hair that fell. Rights fell with it. They claimed their hair came from the darkness of the sea, that it carried magic. For a time, they called themselves Sorcerer Kings. It was believed they could heal with touch, tame animals effortlessly, and see what had not yet happened. Whether myth or memory, these beliefs reinforced their power. So how did such a dynasty fall? Not overnight, not through rebellion, not through war. It was neutralized, silently, By the late 7th century, Merovingian kings still sat on the throne, but real power had slowly shifted elsewhere, to the mayors of the palace, men whose duty was to serve the king, and who eventually replaced him. The most powerful among them was Pepin of Herstal, and then his son, Charles Martel. The kings became ceremonial figures. They attended rituals, stamped seals. They looked weak, but they were still kings, and their hair was still long. That alone was a problem. For the church, for the papacy, power was clear. Authority came from God. And God's authority on earth flowed through the church. But the Merovingians disrupted this order. They did not receive their crowns from the Pope. They did not derive holiness from the church. Their legitimacy came from blood, from Merovec, and that was unacceptable, because if holiness came from blood, the church was no longer necessary. In the year 751 AD, the throne was held by one man, Childeric III, the last Merovingian king, weak, ineffective, unable to rule, and yet still feared, because even weakened he carried the blood, and that was enough. Pepin the Short, mayor of the palace, wanted a dynasty loyal to the church, so he sent a question to Rome, a question that was not a question. Should a kingdom be ruled by a king without real power, or by the one who holds it? Pope Zachary's answer was brief. The one who holds power should be king. That sentence was a death warrant. Childeric III was deposed, but not blinded, not mutilated, not killed. Something worse was done. His hair was cut. Because among the Merovingians, a man without hair was a man without holiness. The papacy knew this. Each cut of the scissors did not just remove hair. It severed the ancient magic that Merovec brought from the sea. This was a theological execution. Childeric III was sent to a monastery and made a monk. The papacy destroyed the Merovingian throne. But one question remained. If this was only about governance, why was the blood so dangerous? Because the truth was never about a crown. It was about lineage. The rumor that began with Merovec's birth was never fully denied. If this bloodline came from a non-human source, then Merovingian kings ruled not by God's permission, but by rival authority. That is why they believed they were born to rule. Not appointed, not chosen, born. And this was dangerous, because if holiness came from blood, the church was no longer the mediator. Centuries later, some researchers made a claim that this holy blood was not symbolic, not myth, but a lineage, a divine bloodline carried into Europe through the Merovingians. And this leads us to the Holy Grail, because perhaps the Grail was never a cup, never an object, never a relic. Perhaps the Grail was the blood itself, a living vessel. If that is true, the Merovingians were not searching for something, they were protecting it. And perhaps when the papacy removed them from power, it was not a political move. Perhaps it was an attempt to make the blood invisible, to bury it in history. The Merovingian dynasty is said to have ended, but only the throne was taken. There is no proof the bloodline was destroyed, no proof the holy blood ever ended. Perhaps they did not disappear. Perhaps they simply became unseen. And perhaps the Holy Grail was never lost, because we searched for it as an object. But what if it was never somewhere? What if it is still flowing inside someone's veins? History does not always give answers. Sometimes it only leaves traces. If you want to follow them, subscribe. Because some stories are not dangerous when forgotten, but when remembered.